Russia's defense ministry announced early Tuesday that some units participating in exercises menacingly near its own and Belarus's borders with Ukraine would begin returning to their bases. But it wasn't immediately clear where exactly these troops were deployed or how many were leaving. The news came a day after Western officials said some forces and military hardware were moving toward the Ukrainian border, muddying the picture. Russia denies it has any plans to invade Ukraine, despite placing troops on Ukraine's borders to the north, south and east and conducting massive military drills nearby. Breaking news: Biden urges Russia to choose diplomacy over Ukraine as he calls invasion still possible. Russia constantly makes various statements. That's why we have the rule: we won't believe when we hear, we'll believe when we see. When we see troops pulling out, we'll believe in de-escalation. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba: Russia has massed more than 130,000 troops near Ukraine. While the US and its allies agreed there was still a possibility of a diplomatic path out, they have kept up their warnings that those forces could move on Ukraine at any moment. Asked about troops returning to permanent bases after exercises, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stressed that Russia holds military drills on its own territory and according to its own plans, they start, go on and end as planned. A US defense official, who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss internal deliberations, said Pentagon analysts are reviewing the Russian withdrawal claim. Speaking alongside Putin in Moscow, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that we are now hearing that some troops are being withdrawn is in any case a good signal, and we hope that more will follow. Scholz didn't say whether Germany had any evidence a troop pullback was in fact happening. Ukraine's leaders voiced skepticism, and others also were cautious. See what a Russian invasion of Ukraine would mean for markets. Russia constantly makes various statements, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said. That's why we have the rule: we won't believe when we hear, we'll believe when we see. When we see troops pulling out, we'll believe in de-escalation. French government spokesman Gabriel Attal said France was trying to confirm the information about Russian troop movements and he would speak carefully. So far, we have not seen any de-escalation on the ground, not seen any signs of reduced Russian military presence on the borders of Ukraine. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg, but if confirmed, that's obviously a good thing. That would be a sign of de-escalation, which we have been calling for several weeks. That would also confirm that we were right to reinitiate dialogue, Attal said. French President Emmanuel Macron met with Putin in Moscow last week. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said that, so far, we have not seen any de-escalation on the ground, not seen any signs of reduced Russian military presence on the borders of Ukraine. Stoltenberg said Russia has in the past moved into areas, like Belarus, with troops and equipment, then pulled back while leaving military material in place for rapid use later. He said that NATO wants to see a significant and enduring withdrawal of forces, troops, and not least the heavy equipment. However, Stoltenberg said there are some grounds for cautious optimism for diplomatic efforts given the signals coming from Moscow. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said Russia was sending mixed signals. We are seeing Russian openness to conversations, Johnson said after a meeting of his government's Cobra Crisis Committee. On the other hand, the intelligence we are seeing today is still not encouraging. He said Russia continued to build field hospitals in Belarus near the Ukrainian border, which can only be construed as preparation for an invasion. U.S. President Joe Biden, in contact with fellow Western leaders including a phone call with French President Emmanuel Macron through the day Tuesday, delivered remarks late in the day that appeared aimed in equal parts at Putin, a domestic audience in the U.S. and the Russian population, pointedly reassuring the latter that they are not viewed adversarially by the American people. Russia, he said, is still in a position to choose its path in the Ukraine matter. Armed conflict, Biden allowed, remains distinctly possible. He drew a contrast between entry to World War II, in which the US and Russia joined forces to defeat Nazi Germany, and prospective kinetic activity ordered by Putin against Ukraine. The former, said Biden, was a war of necessity, while the latter would herald a war of choice. Interviewed later Tuesday on the cable news channel MSNBC, Alexander Vindman, the retired U.S. Army lieutenant colonel and former director for European affairs at the United States National Security Council, said Biden had good reason to draw that distinction, that Russians view themselves as a nation that only makes war as a last resort. Vindman was born in the then Soviet Republic Ukraine. MarketWatch contributed.